You might have seen the cartoon Tom and Jerry, or if not seen, at least you would have heard of it, or maybe had a glance of others watching it. Actually, this serial is a fight between a cat named Tom and a mouse named Jerry, where Tom is in a constant pursuit to capture Jerry, and Jerry, despite not being able to defeat Tom, is able to avoid capture. You might be perplexed at why we are talking about these comic characters. Actually, Tom and Jerry seem to have got involved in another fight, this time in Sri Lanka. Now, who is Tom? Who is Jerry? And what is this fight for? But first, let's digress and see recently what happened in Sri Lanka. Late January and early February of this year saw two high profile visits to Sri Lanka. One of these visits was from America's side, and another one was from India's side. The common thing in both visits was discussion on energy issues. Hello, my name is Neel, and welcome to another episode of Around the World in 7 Days. In today's episode, we will dig deeper into these visits and try to understand their subtlety from geopolitical point of view. We will also try to understand what lies ahead for Tom and Jerry. Now, Sri Lanka is still in the midst of an economic crisis. Its economic woes are far from getting over. Amidst all this, the visit of India's and US officials to Colombo is a clear indication that Sri Lanka's energy sector is going to be the next theatre of competition among the global powers. Actually, US Secretary of State for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland was in Sri Lanka on 1st and 2nd of this month. Nuland's visit to Sri Lanka was a part of her multi-nation visit from January 28th to February the 3rd. Apart from Sri Lanka, she also visited Nepal, India and Qatar. In fact, even before Nuland's visit, India's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, also visited Colombo on 19th of January. There, he brought up the issue of inadequate development in Sri Lanka's energy sector. To put it bluntly, Dr. Jaishankar pointed at China for inadequate development in Sri Lanka's energy sector. The issue also got a resonance in Nuland's statement when she was in Sri Lanka. During her visit, Victoria Nuland alleged that China is not cooperating with Sri Lanka in getting funds from IMF. This statement is said to have a connection with Dr. Jaishankar's statement. Thus, it would not be an exaggeration to say that on the pretext of Sri Lanka, another competition between USA and China is around the corner, and in it, India will have a major role to play. Interestingly, however, Nuland did not discuss anything about the new Fortress Energy project. You might wonder, what is this new Fortress Energy project? Actually, this project is this company, New Fortress Energy, is an American company. It acquired the shares in the West Coast Power Limited of Sri Lanka for the supply of LNG, that is liquefied natural gas, for the next 5 years. Now, New Fortress Energy has a 40% shareholding in this project, and it is alleged that norms were flouted and tender process was bypassed in obtaining this project. It is said that China was also eyeing this project. In this regard, scholars believe that by taking advantage of common people's displeasure towards China, which stemmed during the recent economic crisis, America aspires to end China's dominance in the island nation. All this automatically brings a golden opportunity for India to reduce China's influence not only in Sri Lanka but in Asia as well. Thus, Sri Lanka's energy crisis can prove to be a blessing in disguise for India. Now, the big question is that why the US, which held Sri Lanka's government responsible for human rights abuses just a few months back and even brought a resolution against it in the United Nations, has all of a sudden started increasing its closeness with it. How to perceive this event of a foe turning into a friend? Let's see. Actually, Sri Lanka has committed to achieve carbon neutrality status by 2050. This has become a major factor in global and regional powers competing in Sri Lanka. In fact, energy security is one of the most pressing challenges facing Sri Lanka today. But silver lining is that Sri Lanka has huge renewable energy potential which could become a sustainable source of revenue. Its coastal cities such as Trincomalee has potential to emerge as a major energy center. In this regard, both India as well as the US is willing to be a reliable partner of Sri Lanka. At the same time, the US and Sri Lanka have also agreed in principle on a renewable energy framework which will be helpful in further deepening the relationship between the two countries. Any discussion on Sri Lanka's economy will be incomplete without bringing in China. As we know, Sri Lanka and China are important economic and strategic partners. But it's also true that China is being considered as one of the main protagonists for Lanka's recent economic troubles. Although China has provided humanitarian aid worth US $74 million to Sri Lanka in the last few months, it's yet to take a call on Sri Lanka's debt restructuring and additional financial assistance of US $4 billion. This has provided a room to the US to forewarn Sri Lanka about China's opportunistic policies. This will not just reduce China's influence in Sri Lanka, but also increase America's influence in Asia, especially South Asia. Now, with regard to energy sector, Sri Lanka seems all set to become an epicenter of a rivalry between the US and the China. Let us try to understand what's in store for India. Currently, India's three neighboring countries, Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh, are involved in cross-border electricity trade with India. New Delhi is also trying to add Sri Lanka to this regional power grid club, as this club would offer benefits for cross-border trade in energy as well as address energy crisis related challenges. Even if not at a very large scale, it will be able to at least meet the energy requirements of the countries of South Asia. For that matter, last year, India's Adani Group has bagged a contract for wind and solar power projects in Mannar and Punarin. I know that this word must have refreshed your recent memory of Adani Hindenburg saga, but let's leave that topic for some other episode. Most probably, we will do an independent episode on it. Now, let's get back to the contract awarded to Adani Group. This project was estimated to bring an investment of $500 million in 2022 in Sri Lanka. At that time, this deal was making a lot of buzz as it was done just ahead of Basil Rajpaksa's visit to New Delhi, who was then the finance minister of Sri Lanka. Importance of this deal can be gauged from the fact that on this day itself, India's NTPC, that is National Thermal Power Corporation, had formalized an agreement with CEB, that is Ceylon Electricity Board. Under this agreement, a solar power plant was set up jointly by NTPC and CEB at Sampur in eastern Trincomalee district of Sri Lanka. It is interesting to note that even this agreement violated Sri Lanka's Electricity Amendment Act of 2013, just like the American case of New Fortress Energy project that we talked about earlier in this episode. Under this act, all power generation plants in Sri Lanka are required to be auctioned, but the process was not followed in the case of NTPC. Not only this, India has also signed up for renewable energy projects on 3 islands of Jaffna. Colombo also welcomed Indian participation in the development of Trincomalee and cancelled another contract with a Chinese company in view of India's security concerns. It shows that probably Sri Lanka has understood China's approach of obscurantism and debt trap policy and wants to strengthen energy relations with India. Sri Lanka's renewed approach is also a chance for New Delhi to further strengthen economic and political ties with Sri Lanka, even if it's on the pretext of energy cooperation. So, it would be interesting to see whether this time Tom will be able to catch Jerry, or will Jerry again manage an escape? Who is Tom and who is Jerry? That's for you viewers to decide. Now, let us note down the question based on today's discussion. The question is, America's entry into South Asia, especially Indian Ocean region, is an opportunity for India. Analyze this statement in the context of immediate neighbors of India. That is all for this episode of Around the World in 7 Days. See you in next episode. Till then, goodbye.